It's time to take a stand, bringing the truth to a fucked up land. We've had enough of the lies and deceit. We're done for good with the toxicity. All hail Fangs, we are the Rabyd Nation. All hail Fangs, we are the Rabyd Nation. All hail Fangs, we are the Rabyd Nation. We are the Rabyd Nation.
All right, and a hearty shout out to all of you in the Rabyd Nation, whether you are a paid for citizen or whether you're just a tourist who's just subscribed, or whether you are a potential immigrant looking across the border, wondering whether to join such a wonderful nation as the Rabyd Nation. Welcome, one and all. Just a little secret here, folks. The Rabyd Nation doesn't have ice, so it's perfectly safe here. Perfectly safe in the Rabyd Nation. But welcome, one and all. Welcome to another edition of the Rabyd Atheist Show. Welcome to the Rabyd Atheist. Yes, we won't deport you. Or a senator, yes. But welcome one and all to the Rabyd Nation. I'm your host, Ed Rabyd, a former pastor turned atheist, now a compassionate anti-theist. Welcome to my channel. Welcome to another Friday night where we are going to do a spin-off reaction from Paulogia. Honestly, I kind of got hooked into doing this one because it gives me a great opportunity to use the Habermas meme. But yeah, we're going to be looking at the Alex O'Connor, Trent Horn discussion. I'm not even sure it was really a debate, but we'll be looking at that through the eyes of Paulogia. I use Paulogia because thankfully Paulogia edits out all the boring parts, because the actual debate is like an hour and 40 minutes and he condenses down the actual important parts. So I'm kind of glad he does. I like it when he does this because it gets rid of all the fluff. And, if you really think somebody's taking something out of context, you can always go back and look at it and decide for yourself. But yeah, there you go. Let's see. Announcements. There's, of course, a goal in chat. Keeps my streams ad-free. I rely on the donations of the Fluffle for the most part. So thank you, one and all. That's just a fun way. I'll wear whatever hat whatever hat is chosen by the poll at the end of it when the goal is met. Tomorrow on the Discord, which is also in the chat, we'll be having Vintage Movie Night, the Boondock Saints at 9 p.m. on the Discord. If you want a place to hang out tomorrow night with some lovely people, we'll be doing that tomorrow night. So that'll be that. Let's see. Any other ones? No, I think that might be it. Other than the Discord link is in there in the description, but I already talked about that. So, but there you go. Let's see. That's it. All right. Just to kind of set the stage. The reason I'm calling this a spin-off, and it's not the main saga, it's not the saga continues like this. There is a resurrection discussion that happens often, okay, and I've been going back and forth with Real Seeker, Habermas, Paul, all of us have been in this debate. I do suspect that this will heat up again because Habermas's last book, I think, is due to release in June of his magnum opus. So yes, it'll probably come back out. So there you go. Yes, it's Earl. Yeah. Earl does she does the Jessica Rabbit dress. There you go. Yeah. yes, there we go. I'm trying to find a quote here. Yeah, there we go. Yes, it is Earl in her Jessica Rabbit dress. She does good work. There you go. Yeah, but there you go. Yeah, she's behind. She's always there. There you go. But yes, that's her. But yeah, Earl decided to take the role of Jessica Rabbit because Who Framed Roger Rabbit is among our vintage list of things to watch. All right, but I don't know. I don't know if I need to do the warning. There's going to be a "For a Lot of Bible Tells Me So" jingle meme in this one. But Trent Horn and Alex O'Connor had this discussion debate. I don't know, a couple weeks, must have been a week or so ago. And then Paul kind of put together a video about it. And I'm glad Paul did it because it got rid of a lot of the fluff and BS of the discussion, because it was like I almost want to like, are you guys going to hug? Are you going to hug at some point? So, yeah, but yeah, like he, actually, this is probably an accurate description, Dragon Rider. If you watch the Alex Trent debate, honest, he started to make the long shot instead of going for the easy layup dunks. And I think that's probably a good way to sum up. There's a lot of criticism of Alex in this debate, and we're going to kind of see why. I want to just do this because I think because me and Paul kind of have the same honest main problem with all resurrection arguments, and it's the source material. And nobody ever wants to talk about that. So, yeah, he made it unnecessarily hard on himself. Just don't screw it. Don't screw around. All right, well, let's get into it. So here we go. Here's Paul. He's going to introduce the topic and do the introductions, and he definitely gives us an opening. There's another reason I was attracted to this video is because the place in my workplace was mentioned. So here we go.
Heard a lot of debates on the resurrection of Jesus, but I bet you haven't heard this one.
Grave robbery was primarily about valuables that might be left in a grave. If you're going to be there anyways and you're a dubious fellow who's into witchcraft, you might like some free garments that are super expensive in the ancient world. Take that with you as well. So I would say, there's no nice Walmart to go to get stuff here.
It's the argument from no nice Walmarts.
Depends on how nice the linen is, right? I mean, it seems like Joseph and Nicodemus were doing a bit of an emergency burial. They probably just threw him in whatever they could find.
What one finds in these situations, it's good to set the bar extremely low when it comes to expectations.
That last line about lowering the bar and expectations, this is probably a good one for this video as well. Like I think my expectations when I heard about this debate were a lot higher than the end result. And Paul's going to make some very good points, and I'm going to definitely chime in. People ask me why I do this. Like, Paul always gets accused of he doesn't have any education in this. And so I come along, and I do have education in any of this, and I say, yeah, what he said a lot. So there we go. So there he is. Stealing the body. Yeah. Oh, I almost totally forgot to shout out everybody's here. So what am I doing? Poor host I am. Fred was here allegedly. The elder gods are here. Elizabeth is here. Dragon Rider, Jackie, Decibel. Good to see all of you. And we do have one vote for the hat phone. I don't know. Anybody else? All right, that's it so far. I'll shout out anybody else who comments. But here we go. Yes, roll call. I forgot the roll call. Yeah. Stealing body was fine, but any of the stuff that came along with it, big no-no. Yes. Well, it's kind of, that was the weird part of the debate. When I watched the actual debate, is like they're going back and forth on necromancy versus just standard grave robbing for money. I thought it was hilarious, but there you go.
Welcome to Paulogia.
Paul from Paulogia, though I think I mangled the pronunciation in my previous video addressing some of his topics.
And this one, where
A former Christian takes a look at the claims of Christians.
recently this happened.
Did Jesus rise from the dead?
No.
I'm John Nelson, and today on Unbelievable, we have two exceptional guests discussing the resurrection. Joining me in the studio is Alex O'Connor, a public philosopher and host of the Within Reason podcast. And joining us online is Trent Horn, a Catholic apologist at the Council of Trent.
And even though this one didn't quite set off the Christian YouTube alarm bells that Alex O'Connor appearances sometimes do.
Alex O'Connor debates Trent Horn on whether or not if Jesus did in fact rise from the dead. He brings up Mormons and how if so many people witness Jesus resurrect from the dead, why don't you believe in the Mormons?
Now, I'm a Christian, but I will admit this is quite an amazing point, and Alex is going to expand on this more.
Mormons and atheists have more in common than many think, and Alex O'Connor may have proved that.
You guys, you Catholics, are just as crazy as these Mormons, okay? And I'll show you why.
I thought we'd talk about it as I...
Actually, I have to say, while it was unique, I think you can, I don't know if that was the best way to approach that topic, other than there are a lot of similarities between the claims of Mormons and the claims of Christianity. Like there's, we saw this, we have golden plates, we have people who witness things and they wrote down that they witnessed things. So it's like, yeah, it's one of those, it was an interesting argument to propose, but I think that the more obvious argument was, well, let's talk about the Gospels themselves. And I think that's where me and Paul here kind of hits that point pretty hard, and I'm going to as well. So, but yeah, that's kind of where we're at. Good to see you, Ron. Yeah, I think that's everybody now. Again, I caught up. All right. So here we go. That kind of sets the stage. Here we are, Trent Horn, Alex O'Connor, round one, ding, and here we go.
I definitely have thoughts, mostly for Trent, but also for Alex and John as well.
So I think that we should follow evidence. We shouldn't necessarily rush to supernatural explanations, but we should see which explanation best accounts for everything without cramming the evidence, without bringing in outside ad hoc explanations. And I think Jesus rising from the dead really does do a good job of explaining a lot of the data surrounding Jesus' resurrection. And I think it's up to everyone should really look into this the data, to put forward what explains that happened. And I think resurrection, it does explain all the data without having to compress or force it really, whereas other explanations tend to have to bring in more ad hoc elements.
Inference.
Really, you have to, it's the best one that doesn't have to compress things and it doesn't have to do, seriously. I've never done Trent Horn before, but if that's the way he reasons, I'm not sure what planet he's living on. Because in order to believe in the resurrection, you have to compress a whole bunch of side arguments. Like you have to accept a whole bunch of other things. And my general complaint against most arguments for the resurrection from minimal witness, minimal facts and all the rest of them is all of you have to make a large amount of assumptions. You have to compress a whole lot of ideas. And supernatural assumptions in of themselves are extraordinary claims. Like if you're going to sit there and put out that the resurrection happened, you might want to do more than just say, oh, the other arguments, you have to do all this hoop gymnastics of. Do you realize that to believe in the resurrection, you have to kind of say that something is suspended in reality in your favor in a massive way? Like you can't just, that's to sit there and say that you have to compress more for all these naturalistic explanations. If that's your best argument, I think that's a matter of opinion. So I don't know. So, yeah, I mean, I'm kind of struggling to kind of explain it here, Elizabeth, because that is a very big claim, and it's really very much on vibes as to which explanation requires the most compression. And I'm not sure compression is really a good way to explain it anyway. It's like I didn't get it, because it was like, dude, you're basically expressing an opinion that the resurrection is the easiest explanation. You have to deal with the supernatural effect of the fact that in general, most bodies don't rise from the dead. Like you got to prove something that's a very extraordinary claim. And that kind of, I don't really give a damn if the rest of them have to come up with various finagled things. You're pushing the easy button of explanation without proving the resurrection. and I don't think you're kind of jumping ahead. So yeah. My theory is YouTuber will tend to evolve towards what makes them more money. Probably. Maybe even yours truly. Hey, Felicia. You're a Catholic. This one should be fun for you. So in the Catholic planets where, okay. All right. Well, that makes more sense. His head is far up his ass with circular reasoning. He's inspecting his teeth. Trent Horn. It's just another brainwashed excuse it is, regardless of what denominational flavors. Actually, rising from the dead is the least plausible explanation out there. Yeah, because it requires something we don't normally see. Robbing a grave, that's something we see. I've heard him, thanks to Mindship, do a conversation with him why heaven is torturous. Yes. So, facts is going a lot of heavy lifting. These are less facts and more generic segments. Scholarship can interpret it differently, but nod to. Yes. Yeah, here we go. Yep, here we go. There is a little bit of empty tomb in this one, but not as much as I thought there would be.
The best explanation that fully explains the data is a reasonable approach for most things. What is perpetually frustrating about resurrection debates is a failure to agree up front or in advance on what data is to be explained. While that trend was not really broken in Alex and Trent's debate, at least Trent put forth something he called his 3 core facts.
When it comes to showing the resurrection, it's basically showing 3 facts. Jesus was alive, then he was dead, then he was alive again.
Okay. When I first heard this, okay, I was listening to Paul's video, and I first heard this, I'm like, what? 3 core facts that Jesus was alive. Okay, that people start out alive is not really all that much of a real pivotal thing. Like, we all start alive. We all die. So you have 2 things that are so easy, like these are easily proved. Is this like a reverse Mott and Bailey? Like, we're going to start in the Bailey with easy provable claims, and then we're just going to jump the hell out the window? I mean, what are we doing here? Yeah, like, 1 fact there is doing a lot of heavy lifting. Like, the fact that Jesus is alive, that Jesus lived, is, we could debate the historicity of Jesus. I'm kind of like on the fence about the issue because I realize that what the Gospels are is collections of stories, and they're no better than collections of mythology like Hercules and Perseus. But, and those are not considered real people necessarily. So it's like, I get that part of the debate. Yeah, a Jewish rabbi could have been the start of the whole Christianity thing. The fact that somebody like that was alive and then died, that's a fact for every human being. Like, let's throw those off the table. And that last one is the real debate issue. Like, that's doing a lot of heavy lifting on that one. So there you go. It's a bad one. Yeah. Nah. Hey, well, Jesus lived and died. Some zombie corpse of the memory of the idealist version of authoritarian fairy tale named Jesus is alive today. Yes. But yes, like it's like, dude, this is it. This is what you got. Like, I mean, I'm expecting more. I guess I was expecting more out of Trent Horn because I've never done it, but I feel like he's falling into the same place all the other ones do. Like, all the other ones are, Catholics love doing that kind of thing. Okay, there we go. Yes.
So whatever the evidence that would show he was alive in the first place should be good enough to show he's alive in the second place.
Well, those are some crazy facts to declare. You don't get to win a debate by pronouncing that the debate topic is a fact. Imagine if a state prosecutor's opening statement was, we have 3 facts. The victim was alive, the victim is dead, and the defendant killed the victim. Whatever evidence shows he was alive in the first place should be good enough to show that the defendant killed him. This absolutely does not follow. Alex asked for clarification on this.
Trent said earlier at the very beginning of this debate, he said, the evidence that Jesus was alive after his death is as good as the evidence that he was alive before his death. I don't know if that's what you believe or if it just sort of came out that way.
Well, I think I meant to say that there are similar kinds of ways to verify that. Just, you could show someone's alive by people saying we saw him.
Sure.
So Trent seems to be advocating.
I got to stop there. Actually, that doesn't show that somebody's alive just to say we saw him. I'm sorry, Felicia, but I've never done Trent Horn before. Like I always have this hope with every new apologist that I do, I might hear something different. But I'm not hearing anything different here from Trent that I haven't heard before. But yeah, that claim that we saw him, so therefore he's alive, like we can do the same kind of evidence. No, this is the evidential proof to prove that somebody's alive before they die is not as heavy or not as necessarily like it's a mundane claim to say somebody who lived before they died. Like those two claims are easily handled. But to say somebody came out of the tomb alive after they were killed, that's a whole new level of evidence that just being alive before you're dead needs to ask. So I do have an avatar. You want to see it? Here, I'll put up the picture again. Hold on. I got to make sure the video is paused and saved where it needs to be. But yes, that's my avatar in the middle. I am Han Solo. Paulogia is Luke Skywalker. We got the lovely I Killed Earl as C-3PO, and Fangs takes the role of Chewbacca, so he's Butter Kabaka. And we have Habermas as Jabba the Hutt, and Real Seeker as the Rancor. So there you go, Ryan. There you go. So I don't know. He probably got brain into something. So there you go. Yes, Fluffabaka. Yes, that's another one. But we have all kinds of droids too. Various people will recognize themselves in this, like Triple E and, and some of the others over the years. But Earl turned a lot of the followers of the show into droids. So just for that. So yes, but I do have an avatar for this one. I am the sketchy captain of the Millennium Falcon. Let's put it that way. Oh, yes, there's a gonk droid. There's several droids in here. There's a lot of them. But Earl did a good job with this one. And I usually use this for the Saga Continues, but this is kind of a spin-off because it's Trent Horn. We haven't done Trent Horn yet as a avatar, so I don't know what Earl would do with Trent Horn. He's Catholic, so he might make, I don't know, maybe we'll just say Trent Horn is the Tomato Pope, and we'll do that.
If testimony is good enough to
all right. If testimony is good
to
enough,
determine someone's life or death, then testimony should be good enough to establish a once-in-a-history supernatural resurrection. Again, this doesn't follow for the murder case, and it follows even less for a miracle claim. That someone named Jesus lived or died is an incredibly mundane claim. Billions of people have lived and died, so the threshold to accept this is very low for something.
Yes, that's exactly kind of the point. Thanks, Cranky. Something really witty. Okay. Thank you very much. Hey, Modern Atheism. Good to see you. Yeah, the Catholic, like we could make Trent Horn some form of Catholic Tomato Pope in the saga. So, yeah, Tomato Trent. There we go. There we go. We got it. We just got it. So we just got it. But yes, but yeah, like, the idea that somebody lived and died is a very mundane claim compared to other claims. But if you're going to start bringing miracles into it and say that it's the same kind of evidence that proves a miracle as it proves somebody's existence, that's just simply not true. I don't know where Trent Horn gets this idea, but it's like, so yeah, I'm kind of doing reacting to Paulogia's reaction because I like the fact that Paul got rid of a lot of the fluff. He got rid of a lot of the fluff on this one. So there you go. You've really sinned. Okay, I'm sorry. But yes, like I appreciate when Paul does this because I watched the regular debate. I'm like, oh man, this is way too long. So, but yeah.
Like a miracle, even if one absolutely believes that God performs miracles, it is far more likely that someone is lying, exaggerating, or sincerely mistaken than what they are describing is a genuine miracle. Of course, That pendulum could theoretically swing if one adds non-testimonial evidence, but if we're talking about pure testimony alone, as Trent is advocating for, we can and should prefer the explanation that the person is lying or mistaken, even setting aside one's worldview on supernatural intervention. If one is skeptical of the supernatural, then the evidential burden is even greater, and Trent's testimony strategy is doomed to convince no one who doesn't already agree with him before the debate begins.
Yeah, that's kind of Trent's problem at this point. I would agree with Paul there. Like, you have to assume that the resurrection is like miracles and the resurrection are facts that can be proven. So you end up assuming things to follow Trent's argument. Like, you have to assume that the evidential standards are the same, and that's just simply not the case. So it's like, it's one of the great flaws of Trent's argument so far, is the fact that when I was listening to it, I'm like, dude, you're assuming a lot of evidential standards are exactly the same, and that's just not the way evidential stats they do it. So, you don't know if Trent knows this, but the Bible never really discusses the fate of the apostles. How do we know that I died? Trent's standard of facts is kind of dumb, yes. But here we are taking him seriously, and he's on a show. I wonder if testimony in principle could verify a miracle. I'm not sure it could. In fact, I think there's a problem that's the problem with miracles and eyewitness testimony, is because you'll talk to 16 eyewitnesses and you'll get 16 different discussions. And I think you need something more than that. Like, I would need, like, if we're going to do testable, repeatable scientific results, a miracle has to be like available on command. Like, you have to be able to test it and see what happens. And I don't think that that's possible, because miracle claims are always done in the dark, so to speak. So Trent's standard of evidence is the church's doctrine. Catholic Church, the Fatima is also a miracle, which is a fact. Oh, they talked about that in the debate. They talked about Fatima, and Trent seems to think it was a real event that actually did happen. So yeah, so he actually takes that viewpoint. If you watch the whole debate, I think that's in, I don't know if it's in Paulogia's video, but it's definitely in the whole debate where he talks about it, and he's definitely talking about it like it happened. So,
of course, Trent will betray that he also considers group appearances, an empty tomb, sincerity of the apostles, unexpected conversions, and other Bible plot points to be,
there you go, Felicia.
Facts. And we'll
there
get
you
to
go.
those. But first, let's spend a few minutes on his grounding for these so-called facts, the New Testament.
But the thing that makes the historical Jesus case so strong and undeniable is the extra biblical material. You don't have any of that for the post-resurrection appearances. Maybe
no, because I would still find the evidence from the Gospels and Paul's letters
I understand
Jesus
that,
existing to be enough.
In his own words, the Gospels and Paul's letters are fully sufficient evidence. Around here, we call that... If Trent wants New Testament mentions to be enough evidence for someone like Alex or myself, he should really be spending the entire debate arguing for the reliability of the New Testament and spending no time at all on any other topics that require that assumption of the reliability of the New Testament. Presumably, the most important thing to establish is the reliability of the Gospels, but he spends no time on a positive case for them. In fact, he backs down on apostolic authorship of the fourth gospel.
Do you therefore reject the traditional authorship of John's gospel? Because near the end of John's gospel in John chapter 20, the beloved disciple is referred to seeing something, and the author of John's gospel says, and we know that his testimony is true. And given that we passages mean that it's speaking in the first person, that means that John was not authored by the beloved disciple, right?
It is possible that John was authored by someone else, like John the Presbyter, that was part of the Johannine community.
Which undermines any notion that book is eyewitness testimony.
Yeah, right there is the like, that verse kills the idea of John being eyewitness testimony, because it's clear that the beloved disciple isn't the author of the book at that point. And so but Trent is doing a lot of presupposing, which is, I have said it before and I'll say it again, almost every apologist I ever hear these days is adding more and more presup to their mix, because they have to presup a lot of things. They know they're running out of evidence. They know they're running out of wiggle room. as counter-apologetics continues to pin them down, they find themselves more and more in a straitjacket, so to speak, where they have to kind of say, well, I get to presuppose the resurrection, you have to prove me wrong, which is kind of, you already see this in Habermas, like, because he thinks he's written his magnum opus, getting back to the saga continues. And so therefore he's proven the resurrection is true. So therefore he gets to presuppose that the resurrection is true and everybody else has to prove him wrong. And this is kind of the way apologetics is going. And Trent so far doesn't seem to be getting off that train. Like he's still there. So, almost everybody likes to get to the gospel, but apologists like to forget the fact that when you go into scrutiny, you have to really prove your case. So yes. I'm working on some lore that makes Fangs the author of Matthew because he wanted to fuck with people about prophecy. So, so we can have the different fictional characters be the authors of the Gospels at some point. So, yeah, like there's so many books of the Bible are forgeries, like half the works of Paul. But the elephant in the room, and what Paul is trying to get with his title, like the title is the hidden flaw in every resurrection of God. This is the flaw. And the problem Paul has with this debate, and the one I have with it, and the problem I have with Alex, is Alex should have pressed this point, not the fucking Mormonism, not all that other bullshit. It should be like, dude, you haven't proven that. You sitting there saying that you believe in the reliability of the Gospels. Why? Like, and that's where the debate should have gone at that point. That's where Alex should have pressed him, because this is the hidden flaw in every resurrection argument, is because they're relying on the Gospels being eyewitness accounts, which they're not. They're relying on the Gospels being historically accurate, which they're not. They're hearsay. Like, we don't actually know who wrote each one of them, and we don't know what their sources were in all the stories. The stories just come out of the blue with no explanation. And so it's like, this is the hidden flaw in every resurrection argument, because it's the underlying foundational problem, because they're going to argue from the assumption that the Gospels are true, and they don't have any real justification for that assumption. And so, yeah, it's citation needed 9 times. So it's like, like the Apocrypha is considered canon in the Catholic Bible. So I get where Trent's coming from, but when you're talking to a skeptic like he is, that ain't going to fly. It flies when it's people that already believe and you're trying to keep people believing. But if you're going to talk to me, a former believer who studied the Gospels, who knows exactly what the evidence is for the Gospels and knows that it's problematic, and I'm now a non-believer because of it, you're going to have to do a little bit more heavy lifting than I'm just going to presuppose that the Gospels are true. You're going to have to do more of that than that. Yeah. It's an interesting piece of art. Yeah.
The only real gospel defense given is to compare them to apocryphal gospels in an attempt to put the canonical gospels in a more reasonable light.
Okay, well, when do we see myth making? What does it look like? When you read like the Gospel of Peter, for example, when people go on an absolute myth making binge, it's really, really over the top. That's from probably mid-2nd century. And you have all the Romans at the tomb, all of the Jews, the angels come down. They come out of the tomb. They're giants. Jesus comes out. He's like 500 feet tall. So that's a lot different than the more sober accounts, especially like what we see in Mark. So it's kind of funny that Mark's a bit more sober. We say, oh, well, he doesn't have all these appearances. Then if he did have a bunch, you'd say, that would just be a bunch of myth making.
Well, I'm going to counter Trent at this point. The moment you have a miracle inside of Mark's gospel, I can't remember what the first one is. It might be the dove coming down from heaven or any of that shit. You have myth making. Like, to me, supernaturalism is myth making. The moment you add supernatural elements to something, you're making myth. Like, this is a stupid argument anyway, because it's like, okay, where does the mythology begin in, say, the Norse mythology? Like, does it begin when stories start talking about Thor's hammer throwing lightning bolts? Or it's like, come on, man. Like, it's this has got to be the most horrible argument I've heard about the whole myth. Like you're trying to compare the other gospels and say, oh, where does myth making begin? The moment you do a supernatural claim in any of these gospels, you're making myth, and you got to prove that the myth is real. Like, come on, man. Like, it's like where, you're trying to make this fuzzy reality. And I'm like, no, the moment you make a miracle claim in any scripture and you want to say it's historical, you've entered the realm of myth making versus reality. And I found this one kind of like, this is another one where Alex could have said, well, yeah, when's the first miracle in Mark? I would have said that. Well, there you go. Myth making starts there. You got to prove that that's not a myth. Like, you got to prove the very first miracle presented in Mark's gospel, if that's canonized, and that's your statement, that's where it starts. The myth making starts there. Like, you're adding these supernatural elements to this character. There's supernatural elements to Alexander the Great's accounts and Julius Caesar's accounts, and you dismiss them as soon as they start. You just push them aside as myth. When it comes to Jesus, I'm going to do the same damn thing. Like, nope, you got to prove that miracles work. You got to prove the testimony is accurate. It's like he's trying to play this game of where does the myth making actually start in the Gospels? And like, from Mark in the first miracle claim, like, okay, that's where it starts. It's like, come on, man. So it lost me when Cain ran into a bunch of people. Okay, you're not. Okay. Yeah, he's jumping to the 5th century. Yeah, his battles. Oh, yes, he could have. Alex could have done more a lot to press Trent, but he doesn't, and it's sad. Trent has no real boundary between myth making and fact beyond the Bible stops here. Yes, that's kind of my point. Like, it's like he's trying to make it nebulous where the myth making in the gospel starts, and I'm like, no. It starts with Mark and the first miracle. The first miracle in Mark. Hold on, I'll look it up because I think it's an important point. Like, okay, first miracle in Mark's gospel. The first miracle in Mark's gospel is the healing of a man possessed by an unclean spirit in the synagogue in Capernaum. Okay. That's myth. You're kicking out demons in the synagogue on the Sabbath. That's myth making right there. 101. This is literally a power counter between Jesus and the enemy, the demons. And that's the first example of myth making in the canonized gospels. And it's right up front. Yeah. It's like, come on, man. You're trying to blur this distinction between some miracles being myth-making and others not being myth-making. All miracle claims, to my opinion, as a skeptic, are myth-making. Okay, Alexander the Great supposedly did a bunch of miracle shit too, but we don't count that. But somehow we get to the Gospels and we're going to play this semantic game about which one of them's myth and which one of them's not. Come on. Come on. Yeah. He was microdosing before microdosing was a thing. Micro-overdosing. But yeah, but like it's like you have this guy who's possessed by an unclean spirit and Jesus casts him out, and that's the first miracle in Mark, and Mark is the oldest gospel. It's like the myth making in the canonized gospels, that's the first example of it right there. Like, come on. Trent is really just doing this. How does it feel? Does it feel like myth making is beginning here, or does it feel like it's beginning later? It's all vibes. Like, come on, man. Is he constipated? I don't know if he's constipated. And they wonder why people don't believe he exists. Yeah, like it's the same kind of shit. Like if you read the 12 labors of Hercules or something, you know what the 12 labors of Hercules are. It's like Hercules does miraculous type shit. Okay, it's myth making. Like, come on. Demons can go into the Catholic Church. I think they go in there often. if they exist.
So I worry if that's kind of catch 22 there. I would say Mark is very clear.
The fact that Mark is modestly less outlandish, though I think one can reasonably argue it seems less outlandish primarily because we're more familiar with the Mark account, so the repetition and reference gives it more credibility, as if water walking is fundamentally more mundane than animated wood, doesn't mean that Mark is free from embellishment.
Well, the walking on water seems a little bit more mundane than animated wood.
Trent is conceding that the Christian community was fully willing to write embellished accounts, like the Gospel of Peter, but simultaneously thinks they were unwilling to embellish earlier works. The alleged words of Jesus acknowledge the slippery slope. Whoever is dishonest with very little will also be dishonest with much. No reason is given why these so-called somber accounts would be free of legendary development. And I will say that legendary development or embellishment are better phrases for discussing the canonical Gospels. Alex used the word myth early on.
I mean, for example, Jesus walking on the road to Emmaus in Luke's Gospel. One of the most extraordinary stories in the fact that the two disciples, Cleopas and the other one, don't recognize Jesus. And yet, when he sits down and breaks bread, they suddenly recognize him. Now, there could be some sort of miraculous intervention here, right? But looking at these as historical sources, it seems to me that this is the genre of mythology. I mean, I don't know if Trent believes the road to Emmaus to be a historical story of something that actually happened. It seems to me definitely mythological.
And just to clarify there, would you see the gospel resurrection stories as all taking on this mythological character?
I don't know what the intentions of the writers were. I don't know. With the road to Emmaus, it seems to me almost certain that the intention there.
Okay. This is a pet peeve of mine with Alex here at this point. I don't give a damn what the intentions of the writer are. I can see myth making the moment they start making miracle claims. It doesn't matter what the intentions of the writer are. Like this is where he frustrates me, because he's like moving it into this nebulous area of, I don't know what the intentions of the writers were. It doesn't matter. You have a story in Mark of Jesus going into the synagogue and casting out an unclean spirit. You have a power encounter, an assumed demonic entity. You're casting it out. Like, why? This is just frustrating to me. Like, why do you need to know what the intentions of the author are to not see that they're myth making at that point? Like they're doing something supernatural. It's myth making. So I have no idea. I have no idea. You're not the only one that's made that observation, by the way. Yes. But yeah, Carrier did make a good thing, saying like in 20 years, you went from a crashed spaceship to multiple alien bodies in the Roswell thing. It doesn't take long to mythologically develop any story, but yes. But this frustrated me about Alex. Like, why are you even granting this? This doesn't make any sense to me to grant this. So I don't get it sometimes with him. It's like he had a slam dunk there, and he just kind of backed off.
Is mythological.
And Trent jumped on that as synonymous with hyperbolic and outlandish, beyond his audience's baseline of what's in the Gospels, which he treats as totally normal. It's semantics, but for the Christians listening, myth means Narnia. The legendary development or embellishments of the canonical Gospels need not be anything out of the ordinary. It's just any detail that has been added or expanded for a narrative or theological purpose. Something is...
Do demons like bacon? So that's why they went into the pigs. Gotcha. I can see this. I can absolutely see this. Thanks, Cranky. I always love it when you chime in from the Ellen. We're okay. Yeah, we're okay. She's not here right now. ITE has a life. Okay, I don't have one. I'm a YouTuber. So, yes. You don't understand that supernatural stuff is an everyday occurrence to them because that's the way they perceive the world. And it's like, but this whole idea of, I don't know what the intentions of the author, when Jesus casts out a demon, that we can't say that that's mythological. I don't need to know the intentions of the author. Like, you're introducing the supernatural and miracle claims. So how the hell are we not doing stuff? Like, I don't get it. So I honestly, people ask me what I think about the Chronicle of Narnia's movie. If you look at them from a fantasy point of view, they're not bad, and you can actually have kids watch that one. Like, I'm not going to have children watch the Game of Thrones. Like, okay, and you can kind of get there, like when they get older, you can kind of do like Lord of the Rings, but we're not, But I thought the casting was pretty good for that movie series they had there. It was pretty good casting. So, but yeah.
Mundane as a soldier sticking Jesus with a spear could be an embellishment to answer doubts that Jesus didn't actually die on the cross. And the stories about Jesus circulated person to person for decades before they were written down. So some of the enhancements were baked in and inherited by the author of Mark. We don't need to posit that the gospel writers were crafting fiction whole cloth. They were working from sources that were shaped for evangelical fitness, not for historical reliability. The first generation of Christians thought that they would be the last generation of Christians. So getting people saved by any means necessary was the goal, not preserving a legacy for centuries. Now, it is my contention that there are likely kernels of historical truth in the Gospels, and definitely some parts that are sincerely mistaken or deliberately embellished. In fact, I think this is true of all historical writing across the board. Trent pays lip service to this.
Now, the Acts of Peter. Now, my point about apocryphal Gospels, I do not believe that everything in an apocryphal Gospel needs to be taken is just false. I think that's bad historiography to say, okay, everything that is in a gospel is historical bedrock, and everything that is not in a gospel is just totally false. We have to sift through the different evidences here.
Here he's trying to defend
evidences. Is this a new thing ever since Habermas put it in his book? Like, all apologists use the evidences thing. Is that what we're doing? Is this what we're doing now? Like, is this? Oh, it just kills me. It kills me. Evidence. It's singular or plural, no matter how. Yeah. I just don't know.
Defend traditions that he likes that are found only in apocryphal gospels. But I really wish Alex would have pressed him on his conceit that since accepting a source as fully true would be bad historiography, which elements in the canonical gospels does Trent think are non-historical? If he does.
But like Paul's making a good point here. Like, it's like, okay, well then on what basis do you translate one from the other one? What basis do you say something is actual good history and which is not? This has been my problem with people that do this. Like, in historical accounts, like from ancient antiquity, there's better ones than others. We acknowledge this. Like, you have some historians that give their sources, they give their names, which is always very helpful, stuff. But yes, I don't think they think it means what I think it means. Yeah, I think what they mean is arguments. Like, they think arguments are evidence, and that's been one of the problems with apologists for years. Like, they claim stuff as if it's true, and then they just assume it. And then when somebody challenges them on their assumptions, they often get very, very beat up about it. Like, it's not, they don't know what to do with it. And then they get all mad and stuff, and you end up starting fights and shit. So have they've been saying that for a while? Evidence is. It's just evidence. There's evidence. There's no good evidence. Evidence is singular and plural. Spider-Man based in New York City. Doesn't Spider-Man world real? I use quotes from it whenever they can. Yes, arguments. Oh, my goodness.
Notes nothing in the Gospels. Is he being a bad historian, or is he guilty of a special pleading fallacy, or both? Even apologists like William Lane Craig can point to something, like the detail of a guard at a tomb is potentially embellishment. But Trent sees the need to double down on it.
Can I ask you, Trent, a clarifying question on that? Because, I mean, do you see apologetic features within the canonical gospel narratives themselves? So do you find those same features within the Gospels, but it's just in a more sober form?
Yes, but just because there is an apologetic, it doesn't follow that it's a hollow defense or con artistry or trying to defend that which is false. Like Matthew very clearly describes an apologetic polemic that had been going on between Christians and Jews for some time about debating what happened to Jesus's body, with the Jews of his time arguing that the body had been stolen. And then the Christians saying, no, it wasn't, and because there were guards and other things like that, which shows that the apologetic there does show there's a missing body. The Jews just didn't say, oh, he was thrown into a pit. He was devoured by the dogs because of the dog.
Okay, whoa, back up here. You're assuming that the account about the guards being in the tomb is even true to make that statement. Like you're sitting there, there was this argument between the Christians. No, it's like, it's an apologetical element because Matthew puts it in because people were already saying that they stole the body. That's what people were saying. It's Matthew puts in the story that they put a guard on the tomb to say, no, they couldn't have stole the body because there was a guard on the tomb. Okay, like that is apologetics. That's myth making. That's legendary embellishment in a nutshell. Like, and then you're going to sit there, Trent, and say, oh, well, this shows that there was a debate about it. No, the accusation being made was the disciples stole the body. Like, and so Matthew in his gospel responds to that accusation because it was out there. When he collects the stories, he adds the story of this thing. So I don't understand it. But yeah. Oh my goodness. They're a Dan legend. They don't really exist. Yeah. Why? Yeah. Like it's like, okay, we need a guard to say, oh, no, they couldn't have stole it. Like, and we can't see that that's just an addition to the story to make it, we filled a plot hole. Okay. Like Matthew fills a plot hole that Mark left. Like that's exactly what it is. Like Luke does the same thing with a lot of stuff. He fills plot holes. He has this thing where he just, there's certain stories that he adds and is unique to answer questions that people have. Like, I think that's why a lot of his, like Luke's focus is on Mary and the Annunciation to Mary and all this other stuff to fill, well, what did Jesus's mom think about all this? Like, what did she say? Who was she? Who was she really? Like, because in Mark, there's none of that story. And so we have to add to the story. So it's like, you can see how the gospel writers, even the 4 canonical ones, added shit to explain stuff where questions were coming up. That's apologetical efforts inside the gospels. And so Trent seems to think that indicates something historical, but he doesn't seem to realize it could have just been added to explain away some objections to the story. Like, he doesn't. So I'm not as silly as I look. Oh, that's good. That's good. All right, I'm going to take a break. We're going to get back to this, but add some comments about, like, what do you think here? Or go get a drink yourself, hit the restroom, whatever you're going to do. But I'm going to take a quick break, and we will be right back, and we'll pick this up where we left off.
It's going on a break, but he'll be right back. So just sit there in that chair and relax. He had to go potty, or maybe to get a drink, but he'll be back sooner than you think.
So don't flip out and don't change that dial. Just sit back and enjoy your black and mild. And before you know
cow. It's not like you had anything to do anyhow. Yeah, it's just 2 minutes. Don't lose your head. Anyway, the break is over. Now here's it.
Obviously, one of the best intermission songs that's ever been written. Obviously. Oh, I saw some questions. That appeared really. Hey, Fred, I'm going to grow it until it's a braid down my chest. So that's the ultimate goal. That may take a few years to pull off. So that's the goal. But yeah, I mean, I mean, besides, if I get the, if I get my horned hat, like it has devil horns, I think it'll go pretty well. Like that's going to be so. No, I've never had long hair, Jackie, but according to Earl, I look like the night elves in Warcraft. And I had to say when I saw one, she has a valid point. And I've actually promised Earl this Halloween I will do a night elf cosplay for a broadcast. So I probably have to get a new long hair wig for that. So you will see me in long hair at some point. Yes. So there you go. But I've never had hair that long. But yes, I'm supposed to do that. You burped the cow? Oh yeah, don't have a cow. Oh my goodness. Uh-oh. Did the elder gods force more people to become citizens? All right, there we go. NJ1 1978. Dad. Bent up. We're just 01. 01. Left-handed Jedi. Okay. I recognize some of you. Skepticus Maximus. I recognize that name too. So there you go. The elder gods giving us more memberships. Look at you. Look at that. And there she is. People were talking about you earlier. There she is. The wonderful, lovely, smart, intelligent, beautiful lap in which our Lord naps. I killed Earl. One of the smartest women I know. So there you go. So the weirdest thing about Trent is his literal adherence to the Gospels. There are so many Catholics that don't have the Gospels as literal, but Trent is like the Gospels right you wrong. Well, that is odd for a Catholic. Well, let's get back into it. Let's. Okay, so we have Trent trying to explain his position. What was he doing again? It was easy to forget because it wasn't a very good point.
We don't see them making that kind of argument. So there's an apologetic, but it can reveal truths that are helpful to the case we're making.
That's pretty much the extent of Trent's defense of the reliability of the Gospels.
Yes, and I have to echo that, and it was disappointing. It was absolutely disappointing that Trent, and what was more disappointing is that Alex didn't press him on this, because this is absolutely the hidden flaw in every resurrection argument is, can we rely on the Gospels to be accurate history? It is a legit question, and it's the very first thing that you have to establish as a foundation. If we're going to argue about the Gospels, are they even reliable? And that's the problem, because Alex doesn't really press it on it. They start arguing about the gospel accounts and what the gospel accounts say. And it's like, yeah, like, come on, man, go after him about that. But he doesn't do that. So, and then Paul, I think he does make another Paul. Paul does make another point about what he presses for accounts.
You want to classify his defense of the reliability of Acts as an umbrella fence for both Luke and Acts.
I also think we have good historical evidence for Luke's account of these group appearances, that Luke, as the atheist Richard Carrier says, is a better than average historian, which is a lot from a very critical atheist.
Okay, so I'm a former Pentecostal, and so the Luke Acts thing was always a big sticking point for our theology, because there's even master's thesis level book paper that was published in almost every Pentecostal school that I remember that talked about this connection between Luke and Acts and the theology of the Holy Spirit, the Holy Ghost sort of thing. And there was a lot of, we need to have this because otherwise the historicity of the Acts is in question. We have to, like, there's this, if Acts isn't linked to Luke, then Acts kind of stands on its own, and it has even less reliability than the Gospels, but they're trying to link Luke and Acts. So you can say it's the same writer. So he's using the same historical method. So, yeah. So, yeah, I mean, you can't prove who wrote it. So it's like, it's always going to be in there. And that's the big problem with it. And that's always been the big problem with it. It's really like he's making a case that I don't know if Trent realizes as a Catholic, he's making the same case that a Pentecostal would make, like about Luke and Acts. So, but yeah, like he drops that on there, and I think Paul's going to have some words to say about that I'm probably going to very much agree with.
Richard.
That's a quote mine. Here's the full context from Carrier's book, Not the Impossible Faith.
This doesn't mean Luke was necessarily a lousy historian. He was certainly better than average when it came to some details, though even at his best, like all other ancient historians, for each detail he could only be as reliable as his sources. But on top of that, we know he lied. For instance, his account of Paul's mission and the division it created in the church contradicts Paul's own account in his letter to the Galatians in almost every single detail, and in a way we can discern was deliberate. And if Luke lied about that, he could be lying about anything else. Moreover, Luke cannot be classed with the best historians of his day because he never engages discussions of sources and methods, whereas they did. And that is a major reason why modern historians hold such men as Thucydides and Polybius and Arrian in high esteem. They often discuss where they got their information, how they got their information, and what they did with it. It is their open and candid awareness of the problems posed by writing a critical history that marks them as especially competent. Even lesser historians, like Xenophon, Plutarch, or Suetonius, occasionally mention or discuss their sources, or acknowledge the existence of conflicting accounts, and yet Luke doesn't even do that. But despite all that, even if Luke were as honest and reliable as the very best historians of his own day, that would still not be sufficient to carry Holding's point for the resurrection.
I think...
Okay, I got to stop there because what Trent Horn did there was quote mine, and Paul called him hard on it because Richard Carrier did indeed say a lot more about Luke being a historian, and it wasn't flattering. Okay, like it's been a while since I've seen a quote mine that egregious, but it was pretty damn egregious. Yeah, I mean, that's another good question, but yeah, it's like, oops. But yeah, like the quote mining thing has been around in apologetics forever. They'll take a quote from somebody, and they seem to forget that people can open up the book and read the context. Like they do this with Darwin a lot, but here Trent Horn like does it with Richard Carrier, which is he's a mythicist and talks about Luke, and it's like he's quote mining there, but it's like if you read the rest of it, it doesn't wash. Like he pulled it way out of context. So yeah, there's a lot of accepted historical items in the Rivers of London books. Doesn't make them all real, no. Quote mining thing is something that seems to be somewhat of a social contagion in apologetics world. They hear somebody quote mine and they just repeat the quote mine without research. Yeah, it's like I think when people do quote mining inside apologetics, they never check the sources. They just assume that, oh yeah, because they're quoting somebody, you can always look it up. The problem is when you do look it up, you find out that it's been taken out of context. You ripped it out of whatever it was and put it in your own terms. And they do that a lot. And they automatically just accept them because they're quoting somebody, so it must be true. So it's like, no, you can't make that assumption. It's one of the big problems with a lot of apologetics is people making assumptions about what people say and do, and they do that with the Gospels, and then they do that with everybody else. You see that. I'm going to make this point, I think, probably in the video I'm working on this weekend, is that you see that a lot with a lot of pastors and preachers too, is they will say something and they just assume that the audience is going to accept it as true without backing it up with evidence. They don't do that. Okay. And quote mining is kind of like that. They pull a quote from somebody, this person said this, and therefore it must be true. And it's like nobody bothers to go after things. So it's like it's they never check it. And you'll see a lot of pastors do this. Oh, you don't want to do this. You don't want to watch that movie. It's just awful. And it's like, did you actually watch it, Pastor, to know that it's awful? Or are you just hearing what somebody else said? Like somebody else quoted, some other Christian quoted, it was an awful movie. So therefore everybody, and so there's no proof offered for that it's an awful movie or whatever. It's based on the fact that somebody said something that everybody agreed to, and then it just gets passed along. And it's the same with quote mining and apologetics. They just pass it along because they just assume it's true. And it happens a lot. It is a very much a apologetic thing, though. They do that a lot. So yeah, like you don't have to cite your sources with apologetics. They don't bother. Yeah, well, it's a term for lying, yes. But yeah, like it's something that is inherent in apologetics. They will quote mine to death, and then they don't bother to cite their sources where they got it. But you'll see pastors do this from the pulpit too. I used to do it. Like I'd make general statements, and I really have facts to back that up. It doesn't matter. I'm the pastor. People just take my word, and it's like that's the problem. They're just taking your word, and they've gotten trained into just taking your word and not looking it up. Like it is disappointing. It is very disappointing. Yeah, and this bait is disappointing. I don't know. I'm going to do as far as I can in a couple hours, but I think there's some good discussion points in this. But it's disappointing because Alex is letting the softballs go right by him. He's like, there are so many times that, to put it in soccer terms, there's an empty net with no goalie and he doesn't kick the ball. Like it's bad. It's so obviously bad. Like, and I think he knows it too. He's like holding back and he's doing it on purpose, and it pisses me off. Like, I really hate it when people do this. Quit pissing me off. Like, just shoot the goal. Just kick the ball, dude. Like, yeah, it's like, so yeah. So there you go.
Trent should have to read and respond to Carrier's well-written and scathing article called How We Know Acts is Fake History as penance for such an egregious quote line.
A lot of this, though, it comes to, let's say, okay, you're saying, well, we got Paul, he's got the appearances. How do we know this wasn't just hallucination? That's where I depart from the mental facts people and saying, I think especially like Luke's description of these group appearances, I think Luke is a very reliable source when talking about things.
Yeah, we know you do. Well, that's just vibes.
Yeah, well, that's just like your opinion, man.
I think Luke is very unreliable when talking about things. So does that solve anything?
So, for example, just because something's recorded only in one place, it doesn't mean that's, it didn't happen anywhere else. So, for example, in AD 41, the Emperor Claudius expelled a bunch of Jews from the city of Rome. What's interesting is that Josephus and Tacitus don't record this event. It's only recorded in two places. Suetonius, who says they did that because of Chrestus, which might means they were fighting about Christ, and Luke in Acts 18:2.
So,
okay, hold up. Before I get to Paulogia's response, anybody catch what he did? He said just because it's not recorded in one place, and then he gave two places this event was recorded. Like he didn't give an example that backed up his point. So I'm going to let Paul finish this off because he does a good job of it.
Technically, that's not something recorded in only one place, and therefore unhelpful in demonstrating why one should have confidence in a single source claim.
A lot of times Luke makes these kind of offhand things, and they're 100% historically accurate. Colin Hemer's book, The Book of Acts in the Setting of Hellenistic History, goes through that a lot.
Indeed, anchoring a story.
But the thing in this case, though, Stormburn, he's not the host. The host is a Christian show. Paul will make that point at the end. Like this debate doesn't. Alex is the outsider. Like he's not on his own show here. Okay, he's the guest of somebody else, and Trent Horn is brought in as a video guest, and so Alex has no reason to treat anybody with kid gloves on this extra show. Like it's like in this particular context, he can absolutely go after the theists, and it's not going to harm his show one bit. Like it's not going to hurt him at all. That's what's kind of puzzling about this debate. This debate really puzzles the hell out of me with Alex's behavior, because it's like, this is not your show. It's 2-1. Like the host is a Christian. Okay, so you have a Christian host and a Christian guest via video, and then you have the skeptic. There's no reason for Alex O'Connor to pull his punches here. None whatsoever. Like he should be going for the throat, but he's not doing it. It's like he wants to have this Mormon discussion, and so he's pulling punches on the historicity of the Gospels all the way through. So it's just, I don't know. Resurrection, just remember, it's preserved by the living apostle structure. Yeah, like you'll do that. Yeah, because it does seem he's gotten softer, because it's like it's harder to argue against the fact that he might be grifting a little bit and keeping the debates going into areas that they don't really need to be in. Like when it comes to debating Christians, I'm like, you don't know who wrote your Gospels, and you don't know where they got their sources, and I'm going to die on that hill at that point, because the rest of it is irrelevant to me. We could sit there and talk about the nature of the Gospels forever, and it doesn't change the fact that the Gospels are kind of shit when it comes to history, and they don't want to ever do that. So let's see. Alex has too much of a positive reputation among Christians. Yeah, probably true. Like, I don't know. So I just don't know. I mean, he could probably convince me otherwise if he starts going at the throat a little bit more. But like at that point in the debate, the discussion, he had an open goal with no goalie, and he just doesn't take the shot. It's kind of sad.
Story with known historical details is a great way for an author to lend verisimilitude. I don't talk about it much, but at one point I wrote an officially sanctioned sequel to the movie The Usual Suspects, and the first few issues were published before it was all canceled due to cast and crew controversy. The point is, part of that story takes place during the Iran-Contra hearings in the 1980s, and I added verisimilitude by following the chronology of those events and even pulling in direct quotes from the official transcripts. That made my Kaiser Soze story seem even more real, but it didn't make it real. There's a growing list of scholars like Richard Purvo, Steve Mason, Robin Faith Walsh, and C.J. Cornthwaite who make a strong case that the author of Acts similarly had read or even had handy a copy of the works of Josephus before he penned Acts. CJ has a whole series of videos on this topic.
Yeah, so that's and for those of you that may not know, that is one of the arguments that Acts is very late, because Josephus's works and Acts kind of coincide a bit. And the idea is that for some events, like literally the writer of Acts may have had Josephus's works sitting there on the desk, so to speak, or he knew of them and had read them. And so when he's penning Acts, there's some details that cross over, but it's not because Josephus is recording what Acts said, it's the other way around. And so it's one of those things that kind of gets us away from Luke and Acts written by the same person. So you may very well have Luke being written by a gospel writer, and then somebody writing Acts basically forging the same kind of structure that Luke has in order to make his points. And he's got like different historical accounts around him. So it's like, yeah, it's really weird. But that's why you can't automatically assume that Luke and Acts were written by the same person, and it's been a debate for years because of it. So, well, thanks, Cranky. Fangs, agree you leave your stash alone. I won't share images from the Only Gods page. Not OnlyFans, it's Only Gods. Okay. Yeah. I've been wondering, you guys are like, You guys usually distract me from this topic. This topic may actually interest you. That's why you don't want to distract me from it. Oh my goodness.
That I'd encourage you to check out.
The author of Acts is not a careful historian. And yes, the author of Acts copied Josephus. And no, it's not possible that Josephus copied the author of Acts.
So I think I have good evidence in that. Also, Luke, it was a traveling companion of Paul. I think that's very clear.
Many scholars reject that Luke was a traveling companion of Paul, as do I.
And for the other reason now, too, is that could just be character development, that like the writer of Acts just puts Luke and Paul together in the story, and because he's writing after Josephus writes, he's just adding that element in. So it's a claim by the writer of Acts, not necessarily him recording historical facts. So that's kind of why it's going to say. So there you go. No, it's the other way around. Like the writer of Acts, it has Josephus. He's read Josephus. Okay, that's the thing. It's like the writer of Acts would definitely bother if he's trying to create a good forgery that goes along with Luke. Like he's got the structure of the Gospel of Luke because that's a little earlier, and then he has Josephus, and then you can write these things together in order to make this story coherent with Josephus and with Luke. And so one of the claims now in scholarship is that Acts is a major forgery by somebody in order to line up with Josephus and make the history of the apostles line up more with historical reality in an attempt to make it look more authentic. And so it's like that scholarship is now a little bit more mainstream. It used to be kind of out there with people, but now some people are like, sorry, no. Acts is a very clever forgery trying to mimic Luke's style, and he's using Josephus to kind of make himself look more historically reliable, but he's not. So there you go. Alex is a grifter. My evidence. Matt Dillahunty made a response video responding to his attack on him, in which Alex uses fallacious arguments in recent video. Okay. Of Matt's. Okay. Yeah, Acts also serves to make Paul less antagonistic, because in his letters, Paul is very antagonistic to the leaders of the church, where the Acts does the complete difference. Like he's very in there. So there you go. So it's like there's now this whole scholarly theory around the book of Acts as unreliable history because it's attempting to forge Luke's style, and it's also trying to draw from other historical sources. So it's like and make Paul more seem like he's a little bit more down with the program of the Orthodox mainstream church. And so it's like he wasn't a rebel. He wasn't starting his own thing. And yeah, if you want to make the authority of the church your thing, then this is a great way to do it. Just forge document. I mean, just look at Peter. 1st and 2nd Peter, probably the same reason. Half the pseudepigraphal shit of Paul, like suddenly Paul becomes interested in organizing the church and giving it structure for the long term when he's been an apocryphal, like in 40 years we're all going to be with Jesus anyway, so the resurrection's happening. It's like and then all of a sudden, we got a plan for the long term. We might be here a while. That's how you know stuff is forgeries, because there's a sudden, very dramatic shift in attitude. So who's there, just to go off topic? He's true representative of Fangs down there. I only go for real chaos, Kit. Real chaos, Mr. Elder God. Like, you got to do it right. Like, I'm not impressed with general random chaos. I want chaos that's well thought out. So it's very possible that it's a forgery. Like, the person was very much attempting to mimic Luke. It's kind of new. It's been around for like 5-10 years. But there have been new scholars analyzing Acts and pointing out that there's some obvious differences between Luke and Acts. And Acts seems to be very much copying a style. It's why me and Paulogia, himself and me, I will definitely echo with him. I don't think Acts is very reliable history at all. I think it's myth-making at its finest about the early church. And so for a former Pentecostal like me, I'm not going back to that. So, yeah, there's a lot of list of holes between the two. Yeah, I mean, I think it's something you can look into, but you're going to find arguments on both sides. And the main argument against it is like, no, it's a forgery where the person uses Luke's style and is kind of his outline and makes the claim that that's a former book of his. But because of the way he pretty much quotes Josephus at a couple of points, it's like it has to be written after Josephus wrote. And so that puts it way away from when Luke writes. So scholarly established Luke writing. So it's like two different authors. So no. You can be very, very sneaky in the chaos that you create. Like it takes good planning to create good chaos. So hey Robert, good to see you. Oh my goodness. But yeah. It's a bad thing to update a company's financial systems with Stone. Probably not a good idea. Oh yeah, like no kidding. Like, and that's why a lot of people say that this person is a motivated forger to get the book of Acts of the Apostles done, because when you look at Acts, it lines more up with Catholic doctrine, more lines up with the mainstream church. And it's a deliberate act by somebody to get the Acts of the Apostles to line up with what the church was doing. And it's a later work. So, but yes, if it was a forgery, it kills a lot of religions, actually. But I think Catholicism and probably many forms of Pentecostalism that rely on Acts being their theological anchor all get affected. And they don't want that. So, well, you know, Fangs is the ultimate ag. I mean, Fangs also likes moments where he just chills and smokes a joint, but you know, it's like, yeah, the act of the spiritually guided church is utterly toast. Yes, in all cases, if you have a church that believes the Acts is the cornerstone of saying that the church is spiritually guided, you're screwed. Like if Acts is a forgery, it's like the whole thing is, the jig is up for like authoritarianism type leadership in the church. You can't do that. You can still say that Jesus rose from the dead and there's a Christianity, but the whole apostolic origin, spirit guided church is gone. That theology just disappears. Unless you want to run to Paul in 1 Corinthians with a little bit. But then you got the chaos of somebody's got to have a prophetic utterance. And then now the Pentecostals are having a heyday, but the Roman Catholic Church would definitely be out. So, yeah. Yes. So, yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, good riddance. But yeah. Luke and Paul they were traveling companions, but there's always, every time you see people in the Gospels and stuff together, yeah, there's always that rumor, like, who was the disciple that Jesus loved, and why is it given that designation? Were they lovers? Were they, because the disciple who Jesus loved is a very interesting concept, because is that Mary Magdalene? Is that, or were they a thing and they just wrote the fact that she was female out of it? Like it could be. It's weird.
So while I'm not saying it's impossible, appealing to this particular interpretation isn't going to be a good anchor for proving a resurrection. You'll want more than a disputed interpretation. Also, Luke knowing Paul doesn't help validate anything in the Gospel of Luke, because Paul was not present for any of those events. I could grant Luke as a traveling companion. I don't, but I could. And it wouldn't help validate the resurrection appearances. And that's it for Trent grounding Acts. Again, I think Acts may well be the least correct of all the New Testament books. And this quote mine, an appeal to a tangential historical detail, and an appeal to being the friend of someone who wasn't there for the events, isn't going to be enough to raise the bar for anyone who doesn't already think that the book is reliable. And Trent also mentioned the letters of Paul. Does he defend those, or at least define which letters are from Paul?
And especially groups of people seeing this as recorded in 1 Corinthians.
That's the extent of the defense? All right, then. I guess we can move on to Trent's secondary, quote, facts, even though accepting them relies entirely on the unmade case for the New Testament.
Yeah, like this is Trent's problem. okay, for the rest of the debate and why people are pissed at Alex. Because Trent has left a gaping hole here because he hasn't really defended the Gospels or the writings of the apostles or anything as reliable history. And Alex lets him get away with it. Like he just lets it pass. If I'm sitting in that room, I'm like, dude, no, you can't do that. You can't just say that these are reliable just because you want them to be reliable. Like, you have to prove that the Gospels are historically reliable, and Acts is the furthest thing from reliable. The writings of Paul are half and half, depending on what you believe. And the Gospels, we don't know who wrote them and don't know who their sources are. That's not reliable history. It's not the same as some of these other historians you've mentioned. Like, there's a definite level of what's going on here. And yeah, it's for the Bible tells me so at this point. And Alex missed a golden opportunity to just kick that ball in right into the empty goal, and he doesn't bother. So, yeah. Yeah, I mean, this is... Well, you know, I know what you guys in chat are going to do with anything I say, so I just let it go. You know, so... Oh, yeah. Yeah, Alex was actually debating a Catholic and not just being polite. He would attack the hell out of Acts because it directly attacks the church in its very existence. Yes. And that's what I'm saying. Like, if you go after the historical reliability of Acts, which is what he should have done, you know, yeah. There you go. Let's see. Random reminder that Trent cited Bishop Bud for his favorite arm against women priests. Okay. Oh my goodness. Oh boy. Here we go.
Might as well start with these alleged group appearances.
So, for example, I've watched in debates where William Lane Craig or Mike Lacone or others are, will talk about, how do you explain these groups of individuals, groups of disciples claim to see the risen Jesus, and especially groups of people.
I don't need to explain group appearances until such time as you've demonstrated group appearances.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you.
Had a bit of an infamous written debate between myself and Dr. Andrew Loke on this very topic, which at the end of the day amounted to nothing but... I've asked Mike Lacona and Gary Habermas to defend their appeal to group appearances when the notion fails to meet their own criteria as a minimal fact.
If you're only going to count appearances to single individuals to get away from groups, I don't think that's fair. And the earliest account...
Well, I think that's fair. I mean, when we talk about answering hallucinations, one of the responses we give, group appearances.
Right.
So isn't it fair? It's fair for someone like Paulogia or someone to say, well, what percentage of scholars today in the field would grant the group appearances? So in answer to Paulogia then, name some skeptical scholars who would say they would grant that there were groups of people who had experiences they interpreted as the risen Jesus appearing to them.
Sure. Ed Sanders.
Groups.
Together.
Yes.
More
okay.
than one
Ed Sanders,
together.
and he's a non-believer.
He just calls himself a liberal. I don't know where he is.
What about non-believers?
The fact that we have all this different...
Okay, I had to stop there because this is the whole reason I really reacted to this video, so I could play another clip. So we've dealt with Habermas. This is why this is a side plot and not a direct plot on the main saga continues. It's just it's a spin-off series reaction, so to speak. And it's because we got to remember that Habermas has this riveting memory. Like, the best thing in his scholarship is memory. I'll get to the group appearances nonsense here in a minute, but we have to play the honorary in honor of Habermas. I've got to play the other clip.
I wanted to ask you as well, how did you go about keeping track of all the scholarly opinions?
First of all, I'm not trying to sound cocky, but the Lord's given me a good memory. I teach PhD courses without notes.
First method, good memory. Second method,
As I would go through, I have a notebook here on my right. I forgot about that. It's got little tiny sheets of paper, little tiny squares.
second method, tiny sheets of paper.
And thirdly, I would categorize them in notes.
Third method, categories and notes.
And fourthly, I remember a very good memory. It's just there.
Fourth method is also good memory. Perfect.
All right, there we go. I had to do it. It's obligatory every time Hammersmith comes up. It never gets old. It's as good in my mind as William Lane Craig saying, yes, I have a good memory, but there's this notebook I forgot about. And it inspired one of my favorite pieces of art by I Killed Earl. And so as soon as I saw Gary Habermas is in this video, I got to do this video. For this moment alone. Just for this moment. Vibes and lies. Oh, chef's kiss, Earl. Chef's kiss. I have to keep track of everything with my good memory. Oh my goodness. All right, let's get back to the group appearances thing because it's a horrible discussion, but we'll get to it.
For not just.
Okay, I want to get back to the group appearances. I was in Pentecost for a long time, and if there's one thing Pentecostals do is make miracle claims. And what usually happens in the church is somebody will say they saw a miracle. Okay, we're up at the altar, we're praying. That was a miracle. I saw it. And sooner or later, the story will keep going around the church. It'll keep going around the church. And then by the time it gets around a week later, everybody in the church saw the miracle. And that's the problem I have with group appearances, because you can sit there and talk about group appearances all you want, but people can't seem to understand that people want to be part of the group. And so they will make up shit in order to be part of that group, especially inside. So if you claim to see the risen Jesus, for instance, is a good example, all of a sudden other appearances start popping up. Oh, I saw the risen Christ. I saw the risen Christ. Oh, the two of us were traveling to Emmaus and we saw the risen Christ. Okay, like it becomes, it's just, to me, the idea of group appearance is just like, it's bad. It's just a bad idea. Yeah, it's like, it really is follow the crowd. All right, I got to stop because I think we met the goal today. And Fred said, let there be a hat. Thanks, Fred. And there was a hat. And Fred saw the hat and it was silly. Okay. Which hat is it? Oh, okay. I got to be careful about how I talk about fangs now. Oh, boy. Here we go. But yes, but the whole, as silly as this hat is, you know what's more sillier? Group appearance claims. So there you go. Yeah, Alex is going silent. He's grifting both sides. They're all grifters. Alex is really smart, and there's no need for this. Yes. False monotheism. But yes, I saw something here from Robert. No one will grant that a group appearance has happened. They will grant that the text said group appearances happened. It's not the job of scholars to argue that the writer was wrong or lying. Yes, and that's kind of a good point, because counter-apologists are pointing that out. Like, yes, we got a bunch of people that are claiming group appearances. That doesn't mean they happened. Okay, it's kind of the same with even modern group appearances. It's like, but I was a Pentecostal too long to believe group stories. When my whole church started to believe something was happening, I didn't assume that it happened because I knew how that worked. Because somebody with spiritual influence in the church said they saw something. Next thing you know, everybody sees it. Come on, look at this. Oh, I see it too. Like I had that problem with some sort of visual nebulous experience at the altar. I see the Shekinah glory of God coming down on the altar because somebody had read a book, like one of those Pentecostal books. And at first nobody could see it. And then by week 3, everybody could see it except me. So I was the unspiritual one at that point. Oh my gosh. Yeah, the 5,500 witnesses is a big one. Hey, no problem. Yeah, Cranky makes a lot of forced citizens. Like, welcome to citizenship, citizen. Don't worry, we don't draft anybody here at the Rabyd Nation. We just don't do that. And we don't have ICE either. You're not going to get cast out. So yeah, the dancing mania, and look how many times groups lost their crap on a dance. You have these things in Pentecost where people start to dance in the spirit, and then one right after the other, more and more people do it, more and more people do it, and it becomes a thing. So group appearances, as testified inside of a book, don't impress me, because I know human psychology enough to know that happens on the reg inside churches as it is. So there you go. The Ed with the hat isn't an infallible saying the fagsman with the E with this doesn't care what you say or without the, okay. See, we have another heresy. I say I hate to challenge the elder gods, but I think they have heresy involved. I think the elder gods would actually have a motivation to spread heresy about Fangs, because that would be more agent of chaos kind of shit. So there we go. It's the reason why we embrace heresy and we embrace theological errors and all kinds of stuff, because it's all more chaos. So yes, it's heresy. Yes, Fangs loves heresy. Hair, you see. There you go. But yes, the group appearances don't really do that much for me. Don't impress me.
Just individuals, but groups, cross-referencing it.
What different evidence? There's the second-hand at best hearsay list that Paul passes along, but can't attest to other than that he heard it. And there's the Gospels. That's not all this different evidence. Alex decided to channel his best Dale Allison impression on this one.
So you take the appearance to the 500. You just ask any question, and you don't know the answer. Who were these people? Were they in the south? Were they in the north? Were they in Galilee? Were they in Jerusalem? How many of these people knew Jesus really well? How did they see him? Really, how did they see him? 500 people, that's a lot. Now, it's got to be an approximation, but was there a receiving line? Is there a jumbotron?
I mean, most pressingly, Paul says that Jesus appears to 500 people, as above 500 people, probably more than possibly above in a visionary experience. That's something else. And people say, look, this is our only source. But, Paul says some of these people are still alive. So if you're in any doubt, you could just go and ask them. I mean, people often say this. They say, those 500 people, some of them are still alive, so you could have gone and checked. How? You're just going to walk to Jerusalem, which has tens of thousands of people at minimum in it, and just start asking around and see if anyone's seen the risen Christ? How many no's would it take before you said, okay, maybe not then? In other words, I have no idea why Paul says that Jesus appeared to 500 people. We don't know that Paul was there. He probably wasn't. He says he's passing down something that was passed on to him, which says that it's an early creed. But we're not quite sure where that creed ends, because Paul inserts himself at the end of it. But we don't know where he's heard it from. We don't know who these 500 people are. We don't know why they were gathered. We don't know how many of them believed. We don't know if any of them recanted. We don't know anything about this kind of event.
Sadly, from my perspective, Alex chose to posit natural explanations for group appearances rather than pressing Trent to first demonstrate that there were group appearances.
The experience of a bodily risen Christ by multiple people all at once is definitely something that would be unique in history. You don't get group hallucinations of that kind of physical kind.
Really.
You do have inexplicable group visions of, I think, equally inexplicable events, which I'll give you some examples of.
Fair enough. But I see no reason to grant that there were group appearances. Another detail that doesn't even meet the threshold for Gary Habermas's minimal facts, but that Trent will defend because it's in the Gospels, is the existence of an empty tomb. He starts with the classic, why invent a story about guards at the tomb if there wasn't an empty tomb that needed explaining?
Yes, but just because there is an apologetic, it doesn't follow that it's a hollow defense or con artistry or trying to defend that which is false. Like Matthew very clearly describes an apologetic polemic that had been going on between Christians and Jews for some time about debating what happened to Jesus's body, with the Jews of his time arguing that the body had been stolen.
That's assuming that you accept Matthew as history in the first place, which there's no good reason to do so. Okay, it's a nice little bait and switch that Trent Horn did there, where he's like, it just proves that there's some sort of debate that was going. No, that's only if you assume that Matthew isn't writing an apologetic and that he's just writing history and collecting stories, and that just proves that there was a debate in the thing. You have no evidence whatsoever that Matthew just didn't pen that story because people were being critical and saying the disciples sold the body. Like you don't have, he goes right back to being presupperish. You know, he like goes right back to presupposing that the Gospels are true history and it's like a true account of the events. No, you haven't established that. You have to establish that. That is the elephant in the room, hidden flaw of every resurrection argument, is they never bother to prove that their sources are being historical. Because if you can't prove that, we can't go anywhere in the discussion. And so, yeah, pretty round number. I love when Pentecostals talk about one person claimed 500 people saw Christ, while at the same time dismissing millions of people who saw the apparition of Virgin Mary. Yes. I don't know about you. I don't know about oneness, but I do remember in the Assemblies of God Pentecostal Church, we hated Catholics. Catholics were the devil. Like, it was like they were the wrong church, everything. And so the fact that a whole bunch of people saw the Virgin Mary, so what? That's not real. That's demons creating deception. I'm like, dude, like, it was just a weird theological take, but so, he's not so much anti-Semitic as he's anti-Herodian. Like, he's definitely taking on the Herodians. He's the only one that mentions them a couple of times. And I think if they are mentioning the Gospels, are in passing, but he's the only one that directly tells stories that smash the Herodians in the face. Okay, so he's like, the people that thought Herod the Great was the Messiah, yeah, he doesn't give them much quarter. He goes right after them. So, to be fair, 90% of Catholic debate is presuppositional because they believe they have proven Alpha Omega. Yeah, that's probably true. Jesus wouldn't touch a dead body. Why would you invent the story of Jews criticizing legitimacy of the resurrection? Wouldn't that undermine his claim? No, not really. No, because if the accusation towards the church is that the disciples stole the body, he doesn't need. You're assuming that that's what the Jews were actually saying, in a certain way too. Like, it's like, if people were just criticizing that the disciples stole the body, you could just make a story saying the Jews they had it guarded, so they put a tomb guard on it. Like, and it's not a Jewish tomb guard; it's like the Romans were guarding it. And so you create a story in order to protect the fact that they couldn't have stole the body. It's a very reasonable thing to do if you're like post hoc editing Mark's story in order to cover some obvious holes that were starting. It's like I said earlier in this stream, like Matthew and Luke start covering up the plot holes in Mark. Okay. And so, and then John goes completely off the rails. But yes, it doesn't undermine them at all. Like, it doesn't. You could invent a story that they were criticizing because somebody actually was doing it. Anybody would have done it. Like, you hear the story, some dude rose from the dead, and he was there in the tomb 3 days, and somebody says, well, why when the disciples could have just stolen the body? So he invented stories that the Jews have it in the first place. Maybe the Jews didn't have the story, but it's a great little story because you have this antagonism between Jews and Jesus and the Christians anyway. And so you just add the element, well, the Jews were saying that we stole the body, but it was really a guarded tomb. Like, you're just going to add the story later. It doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't counter their stuff at all. It doesn't undermine anything. They're just trying to protect their claim. Okay, Jesus rose from dead. Oh, well, why would the disciples could have stole the body? No, that's what the Jews say, but we're going to put the guard on the tomb. Okay, and then you cover that plot hole. Like when you read Matthew and Luke in a different context of looking at Mark, you see how they're trying to cover Mark's shortcomings, because Mark leaves a lot of stuff out, and so they're trying to cover the shortcomings. That's why the birth narratives, that's all that stuff is added, because people were asking questions and criticizing the story. And so you write other gospels to cover the story. So one claim was that 200K saw one time, all over about 1 million people claimed to saw her. Oh, Protestants are jealous because Catholics could drink. I thought, didn't Martin Luther say you could drink beer? Yeah, the Christian has to contend with the trend of the gospel. It does make sense to me that Jews would be criticized. If you add it as a plot device, like think about it, you already in the story have built in this antagonism between the Jews and Jesus. And so we get to the point where some people are now criticizing, well, couldn't the disciples have stole the body? Christians are telling the story to their friends, and well, couldn't they have said they stole the body? Well, then the writer just says, well, we already have this antagonism between the Jews and Jesus and his disciples, so we'll just write the Jews into the story. We don't even know if that's what the Jews were actually saying. But you could write it into the story. The Jews were claiming we stole the body, but that couldn't be possible because there's a guard on the tomb. And so that's an apologetic element added to Mark, because we absolutely know that Matthew and Luke ripped off Mark. Like plagiarism wasn't obviously a concept. So yeah, yes, there's no tomb. Yes. Oh, going until the Mormons showed up. You're reading the mail here. Yeah, it gets the lineage of the virgin prophecy wrong. Like Matthew does a lot of shit like that. Like if you want somebody post hoc rationalizing prophecy, he's your man. It's a later edition. It definitely is, but it's just one of those things where you can see the literary devices that the gospel writers are doing. They're adding stuff. Later writers are adding stuff to cover the plot holes. They're making a new story, or they're adding their own elements. Or that's why Luke and Matthew are different, because even though they might have had a common source that they both drew from for Jesus's teachings, the historical accounts are usually pretty unique. That's why the birth narratives are so different. The resurrection narratives are different. Like they had their own stuff, but they also had some common sources. They definitely use Mark, but it's like Jesus. But yeah, it's like, yeah, you could keep adding things. Like there's a lot of apologetical additions to the later gospels compared to Mark, because Mark is kind of the original story, and then everybody kind of jumps all over it. So,
and then the Christians saying, no, it wasn't, and because there were guards and other things like that, which shows that the apologetic there does show there's a missing body.
This just means that first century people often did the same thing I'm frustrated with Alex for doing, granting as much of the narrative framework as possible for the sake of argument and debating the explanation rather than disputing the underlying claim itself. Ancient historians regularly preserved stories of omens, prophecies, portents, and divine interventions that they themselves probably could not verify and sometimes explicitly doubted. Pagan critics of Christianity argued that Jesus worked through demons or sorcery, rather than bothering to first establish whether the miracle reports were historically reliable in the first.
Yeah, this isn't common frustrating. And welcome, Bree. Good to see you. But this is a common criticism I have as well, is because so many counter apologists, so many people that talk about this story and the stories of the resurrection are very much like other early critics of Christianity. They're granting the history of it, and you don't have to grant that at all. Like you do not have to grant that the Gospels are even historically reliable. It's the first, if you're going to talk about Jesus and the resurrection, you have to prove, first of all, that these accounts are even reliable history, and that's a very difficult task. So yes, this is one of my pet peeves too, because Alex here they don't challenge that at all. Like it's the hidden flaw in every resurrection argument is this whole, what are we basing this on? We have hearsay accounts based on hearsay accounts. We don't have authors, we don't have sources, and yet we're treating it as history. Why are we doing that? On what basis do we do that, given all the flaws of the Gospels being history? Why are we not doing that? So it's like, it's one of those things. Oh, first time? Well, welcome. So there you go. Yeah, they just do it. But yeah, like it's been, yeah, the original story also has no post-resurrection appearances. And so the apologetic becomes, well, who saw him after he rose from the dead? Well, you could also argue it doesn't have a resurrection account at all either. And so that's why Matthew and Luke start adding a resurrection accounts. And they add people seeing Jesus alive after the dead and so forth. And then John still follows Mark's outline pretty much, but he goes completely off the rails with his claims about Jesus. Like Jesus becomes Superman. And yes, it's like it's one of those things where it frustrates the death out of me that the thing that counter apologists don't do is go for the obvious, which is, why are we even treating the Gospels as history? Why are we treating Acts as history? Why are we treating the New Testament as history, period? Like, why are we doing that? Like, they don't go for it. And it bothers the hell out of me. Like, and I think Paul's kind of miffed about it too. Alex had another open goal here that he could have gone for. Like, the goalie is distracted by somebody in the stadium, and the goal is wide open. You're coming down the field. You got the ball. Just shoot the thing in. Because the thing is, that's the argument that could have been made right here. Is like, where's the historicity? Where's all that stuff?
First place. We see the same thing today. Some Christians interpret UFO reports as genuine demonic encounters rather than first asking whether the underlying reports are accurate.
These are demons. They're interdimensional beings that are masquerading and parading as though they are aliens.
That someone jumped immediately to an explanatory rebuttal that grants the premise does not tell us the premise deserved to be granted. Matthew was written 50 years after the death of Jesus and a decade after the destruction of Jerusalem. The people the newly crafted guard story sought to convince were in no position to independently verify an empty tomb. At least on this point, Alex attacked it both ways. He's both skeptical that it happened and provides some solutions granting that it happened.
I'm not going to say that the body was taken. I don't even know if there was an empty tomb, but if there were, the idea that it was taken either by a grave robber or by the burial party of Joseph of Arimathea is exceptionally more likely to me than that Jesus rose from the dead. Again, I won't say it didn't happen. I just want to say that that's a skeptical scenario, which seems to me perfectly plausible.
Unrelenting and without a hint of irony, Trent let the other eye-rolling empty tomb apologetic drop. And you can probably say it with him.
Well, like in Mark, and the other Gospels agree with this, the first witnesses are women. And women's testimony in the ancient world is incredibly low value. It's basically below a criminal's.
Yes, ladies, he went there. Oh my God, this is such a horrible argument. And the fact that Pauls points it out that he doesn't even do it with any irony. What? Okay, like, it is the worst argument I've ever heard. Like, oh, women's credibility. That's why it's important for them to find the tomb first, because nobody would believe women. But when women's testimony turned out to be true, it made it even more believable. Oh, my God. Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, here we go. And Trent should know that this has been debunked so many times and pushed against, because the obvious thing is this. And yes, the ladies went and got the guys, and within literally 10, 15 minutes had men verifying that it was there too. It is a stupid argument. It's always been a stupid argument, and it's still a stupid argument. And here we have, oh yes, the criterion from embarrassment is coming. Oh, yeah, I mean, I know, the dude actually rails against women serving in the church. Yeah, there we go. Like, still there.
Which I think speaks to the fact that it's historical. Even more so the idea that you have Mark and Luke describing this. If you were going to make up the whole gospel accounts, pick Peter, Paul, Philip, pick somebody more notable. I see a lot of signs that point towards a sober historical account of just describing things as they happen.
Which served as a Pavlovian bell for Alex.
Alex, I saw you perk up when Trent mentioned the women witnesses argument. Did you have anything to say to that?
So much. I'm actually surprised to hear this come up. I know that this is a common sort of apologetical motif, but to me it's clear as day. You know, women discover the empty tomb, which means that, it must be true. because women's testimony wasn't worth that much, and so why would this be invented? There are a few things to say here. Firstly, who knew where the tomb was? The women were told that the disciples had fled at the
Could they
crucifixion
have
of
brought
Jesus.
men along with?
It's the first thing I said when I heard that argument for the very first time. It's like, they were the ones that knew where the tomb was, so of course it was them. In the story, they're the ones that went to the cross. They're the ones that knew where Jesus was laid. Like the disciples didn't. Of course it was them going to the tomb. Come on. Oh, they don't do the watchmaker argument, thankfully. But yes. You're pretty much in awe of that one. They're still coming back with it. Oh my God. Oh
well, we'll get to that. I mean, maybe they could have done, but we know that they weren't. We know that they weren't at the crucifixion, and we know that that they'd fled. And so, in keeping with the theme of the disciples fleeing, afraid, and their cowardice, they wouldn't even know where Jesus was buried. Of course, it's going to be the women who like, it's like a narrative.
Yeah.
If the story said that Peter went to the tomb, the question would be, well, how did he find out? Well, Peter does eventually go to the tomb. Why is that? Because yes, women discover the empty tomb. They have no idea what's happened. And what's the first thing that they go and do? They go and get the men to come and verify it for us. Right? They run to the men and they say, oh, we don't know what's happened. They're these, as the early Christian critic Celsus says, they're these hysterical women, and they don't know what they've seen, and they run to the disciples, and it's the disciples who come and verify it for them. So, I mean, it's an instant verification. Right, like in other words, if this were some apologetical motif, it might be that's why they have them go and check.
But does that apply better to Matthew, Luke, and John than to that original kernel of the account in Mark?
Oh, certainly, yeah. It certainly does. I mean, going and finding the men, of course, it does. Yeah. But like another thing to point out is that, like, this might be a bit of a silly thing to say, but people often just sort of assume that ancient writers are stupider than we are. Like, we sometimes think, and by the way, I'm not saying that this is made up, but I'm saying if you want to argue that it's not, and you say, well, they wouldn't do this, like, because isn't it so realistic that they'd have this feature? Doesn't it make it all that more believable? Yeah. Do you think ancient authors would have been clever enough to think of that themselves as well? Like, it just seems to me, in other words, that, like, the reasons that we have for thinking that it might be historical are things which could have occurred to somebody who was trying to come up with it. But I think it's clear as day.
Yeah, it's like apparently ancient people didn't have an imagination. Come on, man, look at all the gods and mythology that ancient people came up with. Like, the notion that they couldn't come up with this idea themselves is just it. Alex makes a good point here. I'll point out when Alex makes a good point, but this is a definite good point. Like, they could have made stuff up too. Like, that they couldn't figure this stuff out. Yeah, they absolutely could have. So
that it would be the women who would discover the empty tomb, because they're the ones who knew where it was. They were the ones who were following Jesus throughout his passion. They were the ones who saw where he was buried. And then, as I say, the first thing they go and do is grab some men to go and verify it for them. So I don't know if this is as sort of feminist a story.
And I suppose
all of which is valid. There are also other things to say, if I may skim them briefly. First, a huge theme of the Gospel of Mark is subversion of expectations and having the disciples being the last ones to know what's going on. For example, the first person to recognize that Jesus is the Son of God is a random Roman centurion. Having lowly women being honored first is very on brand for the literature of Mark. Second, women were a huge influence in the early Jesus movement, if Acts and the letters of Paul are to be believed at all. Christians typically wear this as a badge of honor about how progressive their religion was about women leaders. Perhaps a woman's testimony may not have played well in a court of law, but they weren't going to court to try to win converts. Women talking to other women is at least half of how the religion spread. This was not embarrassing. Third, no one at all in the stories actually were convinced by the women, not until the menfolk went and checked for themselves. So this aligns both with Alex's narrative points and the misogyny of the day. Fourth, the criterion of embarrassment is always a shaky argument, because we, in a different century, in a different culture and region, are not in a position to identify what would or would not have been embarrassing. Embarrassment is culturally contingent, not to mention that including embarrassing details about oneself is a known tactic to make false stories.
I have to warn everybody, I think Jamie Warner Wallace is coming up. Just so you know. I know some of you are triggered by Jamie Warner Wallace, so yes.
Seem believable.
That principle we talk about of embarrassment, I've known some guys who would include embarrassing things in their lie. I have known guys who can do
in
that.
order to be perceived
Yeah,
as...
because they want to be more persuasive with me.
Enough on that for now.
I agree with you. The argument.
Okay, we'll stop there. I'm sorry, Felicia. But yeah, like even J. Warner Wallace like dismissed the criterion of embarrassment. It's one of the few things he gets right. But yeah, the criterion of embarrassment is basically like, how do you know what was saying? So there you go. Oh my gosh. Oh, just anything out of Rome is written for power, control, and that's truth. Yeah, maybe. maybe. But yes. Oh, yes, hide your eyes. Hide your eyes, Felicia. Oh, yeah, like you don't know what, it's just really stupid. It's really dumb. And the problem is apologists take that seriously. Like people want to believe, do take the criterion of embarrassment seriously. So it's like, but yeah, he's gone now. He's gone. I don't know if he makes a reappearance, but I wanted to warn everybody that J. Warner Wallace was coming.
Argument, who would die for a lie, is a horribly bad one. It's a horrible argument.
Well, thank you.
Because Muslim suicide bombers do that all the time. The Tamil Tigers. There's people who die for things that are a lie all the time. The greater question is, who would die for something that they know is a lie?
And this is the question that landed.
That's a distinction without any distinction. What? There's no damn difference. Okay. Believe is a lie and think is what?
Me on Trent's podcast a few years ago.
Today, we're going to talk about the argument, who would die for a lie? All right. So Paul has addressed that on his own channel and is engaged with the evangelical apologist Sean McDowell on that question. I've also engaged him in his work. He engaged mine. And I have a very strict rule on Council of Trent podcast. When somebody rebuts one of my rebuttals, I don't do any more rebuttals because that would be an endless nightmarish loop. Instead, I'd rather just chat with the person. So here he is. Paul, welcome to the channel.
Let's see if that conversation has helped Trent improve his arguments here.
So for me, the martyrdom or the risk of martyrdom for the apostles, and I disagree. I would recommend for our listeners, get Sean McDowell's book, The Fate of the Apostles. It's published by Routledge. It is an academic study on the fate of the 12 apostles. And he puts in very high historical confidence we can know that at least Peter, Paul, and James, the brother of Jesus, were
just to know, I don't put it in that high historical confidence for any of those.
Martyred.
Of those three names Trent gave, only Peter is one of the 12. James, the brother of Jesus, and Paul joined the group after Jesus' death. Maybe. The important thing is that leaves 10 of the original 12, recall that Judas unalived himself, who have insufficient evidence for being martyred. Unlike when I started my YouTube channel, most sophisticated apologists now will grant this. But for some reason, they're still allowed to get away with their secondary claim.
What I said was also, we see in Paul's own writings and in Acts, there was a willingness to be martyred. And my point would be that these apostles go out. They don't seem to do it for any kind of earthly reward, like we might see with someone like Joseph Smith. They do it for the fervency of communicating this message. The risk of martyrdom is something.
Okay, I have to say this at this point, because he's sitting there, there's no earthly reward. One of the essential elements of the gospel of Jesus Christ, even back in the first century, was that there was an unearthly, spiritual, heavenly reward. To say that the apostles were not motivated by some thought of reward is just nonsense, given the nature of the whole thing as you get to go to heaven instead of going to hell, or you get to go to heaven in such a way that you're not going to be destroyed. You get to go be with God, but you don't have, like, to sit there and say that because it wasn't an earthly reward doesn't mean that they weren't motivated by something that was personal to them is just, I have never understood this argument when you get, well, there really isn't any, like, honestly. So yes, promising unearthly reward is still an earthly reward. Yes. It's like, when I heard that, I'm like, come on, man. They're all motivated by something. Like, you're still being motivated by eternal life. Like, and you know that you're dying. Eternal life is kind of a thing. So Paul persuaded them in bags of gold, probably.
That is an argument for the sincerity of one's testimony.
My complaint, and it should be everyone's, is that we also don't have sufficient evidence that any of the 12, beyond Peter and John, were even out preaching. You seem to be relying very heavily on the first 5 chapters of Acts as your evidence that the apostles were out doing anything. Let me be more specific, the 11.
But Paul in his letters also talks about meeting with the other apostles in Jerusalem, talking about the message being spread,
So
Peter going
in
to
Jerusalem,
the Gentiles.
But in Jerusalem, he names individuals, right? He says, he in Galatians 1, he meets with Peter and James, brother of Jesus.
Right.
And in Galatians 2, John is also there when he comes back. So again, I would say that me as a skeptic, I need to actually account for those 3 individuals. But do I actually, part of the argument in general, like that you make, is like group appearances, and the group of them sort of acts as this guarantee. And when you want me to build a house of defeating methodological naturalism on the sincerity of some people.
Okay, I got to stop there. One of the things that Trent does in his debate is he tries to build this idea of sincerity, that they are more sincere believers than other believers. Now, the largest problem I have with sincerity is, and I end it with a so what. How sincere you are about your belief doesn't prove your belief. There are very sincere people that believe very sincere things that are very, very flipping wrong. Like, the idea that somehow if you're more sincere in your belief, it proves that the belief is more real or more true is just straight up vibes. Like, it's like your opinion, man. Like, it is still vibes. And the fact that Trent is like, seems to be the cornerstone of his whole belief in the resurrection. And it's very much this notion of, I just think that they were more sincere in their belief, and that's why I believe it's true. It's like, come on, man. Like, how does that prove damn anything? Like, it doesn't prove anything. I mean, I could say that, some people are very sincere Muslims and they do the things that they do. They're just more sincere. And that's why I believe the faith. How is sincerity an evidence for anything? Like, there's a lot of people that are sincerely wrong. So, technically the Jews had like an annihilation view unless you did enough righteous things that you would end up being with God. So there is that, but Jesus kind of added the stick to the carrot, like if you don't follow me, you'll end up in hell or dying or eternal punishment or whatever. So yeah, I mean, it comes down to faith, because to me, if you're talking sincerity, you're talking faith. Like, you're absolutely talking faith. Okay, their faith was stronger than the other religions I see. So what? Like, so what? There's a lot of people that are sincere. It doesn't mean they're right. So
right. It is reasonable for me to say, do you have more than one ideologically motivated source that says they even were doing this thing? And that doesn't seem to be the thing that is shining through. There isn't some other source that I can go to and say, aha, that's what Bartholomew was up to. That's what Matthias was up to. It's, I can't build a house on that foundation. That foundation is too shaky. For me, they disappear from reliable history. If I'm willing to call Acts reliable history, which I'm not specifically, but if I'm counting it, they disappear in chapter 5, either from preaching or from being behind the scenes washing communion cups. I'm not sure what you think they might have been doing. And nor were they necessarily in charge of whether or not they were still being associated with the ministry. Let's say some of them went back to fishing. They had enough. They threw up their hands. They got called into the Sanhedrin. The Sanhedrin said, "Stop it." So they said, "Oh, let's go fish." That doesn't mean the church didn't continue to use their names because they were, still part of the 11. This isn't an area where, I know you like to say that the Christian community is tight knit, but that doesn't mean it's immune from people saying, "Oh yeah, Bartholomew's totally on board with us," but you can't reach him. Other than some vague, unnamed groups in Acts, which again I reject as reliable history, the evidence for preaching is shockingly no stronger than the discounted evidence for martyrdom. In most cases, it's the same sources. So why are people granting that the 12 ever believed, or that they were out preaching? If it's just
It's a good question. Like, everybody's just granting that the apostles were out doing their business, but if that's pretty much based on Acts chapter 1 through 4 or 5, and there is no good reason to believe that that's true. Like, there is no, like, if Acts is, it all hinges on what you think about Acts as history. And, as we discussed earlier, that's a big, big question whether it's historical or not. It may just be something else completely. So, yeah. So, yeah, like, we really don't know what they were doing. Like, there's a lot of case for, like, when they say some people believed and others doubted, and are literally looking at Jesus standing on a mountain, and some of them are doubting. Or is that a reflective story of how the apostles actually were? There were a few people that believed after Jesus supposedly rose from the dead, even though he may not have. And there's a bunch of people that are kind of hanging on. And then once they dispersed, these people went back to their old life. We don't know that that's not true as well. Like, this is the problem with this area, because so many people think, oh, well, the apostles were doing this. No, you haven't even established that Acts is even history to even know that for sure. Okay, we may have good evidence for Paul preaching. He talks about it all the time in his letters. He talks about Peter preaching. That's it. The rest of them, we don't know. We have no idea what the apostles were doing. None. So, so there we go. All right, folks, I think this is a good spot to stop. I can kind of remember the two people, but I think we'll maybe finish this up next week as a part 2. The Rabyd Atheist is hungry and getting a little tight. Yeah, it's a precept again. But yeah, like, this is a good place to end, because I think the rest of it is kind of more criticism about Alex, and this is more criticism. Up till now, it's been criticism of Horn. And the second part is more Alex, and the show itself gets criticized. So there's definitely some good points to be made, but I've been on over 2 hours, and that's usually about my limit. But thanks everybody for stopping by. We'll pick this up next week, and we'll finish off the spinoff next week, and we'll talk probably more about Alex O'Connor and less about Trent Horn. And hopefully there won't be a J. Warner Wallace sighting for some of you to get triggered by. And I don't think there's a Habermas one where I can play the jingle, which is a crying shame. But we'll do so. But thanks everybody for stopping by. I appreciate all of you coming by. Appreciate all the donations tonight. We got Decibel, we got Cranky a couple times, also with some gifted memberships that some of you received. You owe the elder gods your membership in the wonderful Rabyd Nation. And thanks, Fred, as well, for the silly hat donation. So everybody got to see the Holy Bunny hat. Thank you very much. Appreciate it, all of you coming by. May fangs nibble on all of your hearts. May you purify all of your vegetables as you garden this gardening season, especially up in the north. You Australians are probably getting ready for your winter. But for those of you getting out there gardening, may fangs purify all of your vegetables from religious corruption with his pointy teeth. If you need warm fuzzies from a religion, we have those as well, because we have the godlet baby fangs who you can look into his eyes and get all the warm fuzzies you will ever need. If you need a religious ritual, just take a carrot, circumcise it, place it on your stash or anything else you have valuable. Fangs, being an agent of chaos, likes to steal things. So it may cause him to steal the carrot instead of your stash. It may steal the carrot your stash and not take the carrot, or it may take both because that's just the way it is. It's not a guaranteed ritual, but it's worth a shot. It's definitely worth a shot. Thanks, everybody. Nom nom and all that. And as always, folks, live your best life. You only get one go around and then it's over. So you want to take all your time, money, and energy, give them to yourself, the people you love and care for, and make this a better world. You'll be happier if you do. Don't waste them on the trappings of religion and faith, because that's a dead end. I speak from experience. And thanks for stopping by. I'll catch you all next time. Everybody have a great weekend. I hope you all have an awesome weekend, and I will see you all on Monday at 7. I'm probably also going to release at least one video this weekend, so be on the lookout for that. But I'll take care. I will catch you next time. See you all on Monday. Thanks for stopping by. Hey, thanks for sticking around to the end to find out how you can support the channel better. Of course, there's always the more normal notions of just hitting that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit your notification bell, and share the video with your friends and family that you think would be interested. That's always very appreciated. If you want to support the channel in a more tangible way, there's several options. You can super chat or super thanks in the comments or during a stream. Those are always very welcome, but you also can become a member of the channel. Members have certain perks like getting the videos early, things like that. They also have some good custom emojis during chat. So all of these things are good benefits to members, but they also support this channel and its work to continue to normalize atheism and deconversion, for which I'm very appreciative. It keeps me going, and it keeps me as a content creator being able to do more and more as a content creator. So if you choose those methods of support, thank you very much. And I appreciate you once again for staying to the end and listening to other ways that you can support the channel. Appreciate it. Thanks, and I'll catch you next time.